One second, I'll add everybody. One second. Mute all upon entry. One second, I'll add everybody. One second. One second, I'll add everybody. One second. All right. So, hello everyone, and welcome to the Sunday Zoom meeting with Sanal Edamaruku. I am Shubhi Sinha from the youth wing of Rationalist International. So, today's topic, the politics of free thought, has created a lot of enthusiasm. We have received many questions. I had to sit down and classify them to make a set of questions that covers all the different issues raised by you. So I'll ask those questions one by one to Sanal and Marco. After these questions are answered, that will hopefully cover the entire arena of the wide subjects that we discussed today. The floor will be then open for the question answer session. Welcome, sir. So now let me start with the questions. So the question is, how do you define free thought, and how is it different from the other popular words like rationalism or atheism or skepticism or say humanism?
Well, that's a question which we have been discussing many times earlier also, but to be precise, I would like to make it very clear, what does it mean by the word free thought? Free thought is a word that has been in circulation from the 19th century to denote the idea that we generally speak as rationalism or skepticism or I mean, even agnosticism or atheism or anything that we know in the general framework of critical thinking was known early as free thought movement. The very word free thought has a clear definition. I will read that to understand it very clearly. Free thought is a viewpoint which holds that beliefs should not be formed on the basis of authority, tradition, revelation, or dogma. Opinions and views should be based on logic, reason, and empirical observation. That's the definition officially of free thought. If you ask, that could be very well fitting to the definition of rationalism also. Anybody would approve that that would be a definition for skepticism as well. So where is the difference? In fact, the difference is only where we focus. I would always like to say that when I say free thought movement or when I say the rationalist movement, it includes skepticism, free thought, rationalism, atheism, agnosticism, critical thinking, secular democracy, secular humanism. All these words are part of the one whole big movement. But there are focuses. There are differences in the focuses. For example, secularism very clearly means either separation of state and religion, which is the general name for secularism. But on the other side, secularism is also used as a word to denote what is not religious, the non-religious. So for example, in Indian constitution, secularism was first used for religious as well as secular is one usage, or secular. Means it denotes only one thing, that is non-religious. In USA, if you ask anybody, are you religious or secular, it would only denote that you don't believe in the religious structures. You don't follow it. You are a secularist. That's why one of the major movements in the United States was known as the secular humanist movement, which is practically a rationalist movement. And the founder of the secular humanist movement, Paul Kurtz, was the recipient of the International Rationalist Award. Until he was dead, he was the honorary associate of the Rationalist International as well. He was earlier the president of American Humanist Association. There is a difference. He was also running a great skeptical magazine, Skeptical Inquirer. So this is all part of one whole movement, which also denotes we have nearly 4,000 different organizations and groups all around the world, 4,000. And in each group, there are articulate members, very active. While they are doing other things, they are so committed and so articulate without any remuneration or any other benefits personally that they would get. They are dedicated to take this idea forward and promote critical thinking. So it's one of the gigantic social change movements in the world, which is now getting networked together worldwide. So this movement can take dramatic changes. It can initiate big changes in the world, provided we all have a clear understanding where we are going forward and how this movement is going in a new direction now, and how we all are joining hands in hands with understanding each other, supporting each other. When people are in crisis in difficult countries, we all support them together, and the movements everywhere is mutually supporting, and thereby we are building up an international movement, something that has never happened in the last century. So this is a big moment of change for the whole non-faith movement, or the movement of critical inquiry. So therefore, what I wanted to say is that when I wanted to say the politics of free thought does not mean per se the organizations with the title free thought, but this is something that we all try to share, the common values that we all have vis-a-vis politics is trying to be explored and discussed to understand where we all are joining together and what are the points where we are still trying to find common working areas. So this is an exploration to understand the political potential of this great movement. So therefore, this includes everything that we know that represents critical thinking. That's what I intended to mean. Thank you.
So, one of the major guidelines is the scientific attitude. So, how do you think it can be brought to the politics?
Well, it's one position that many people do not consider that it has a political dimension. But if you think a government that promotes unscientific medical systems is not actually promoting scientific attitude. If an elected democracy is encouraging superstitions, it's not part of the promotion of scientific attitude. It's the government that can take a real big initiative to change it. And how? I don't think that the government should be a propaganda agency to promote scientific attitude or critical thinking. But as a fundamental understanding, the very basis of human knowledge is critical thinking. To understand things with critically evaluating it. That's the basis of science, and that's the basis of scientific understanding. That's what is to be included in the curriculum from the very beginning. And how we can include that in the curriculum? That needs a state policy, a political policy. So for example, we teach science. Everywhere in the world, science is a subject. But there are presidents who speak about alternative medicines, who are against vaccination. Big countries. For example, you know that in Brazil, for example, the president is against vaccination. He says that it doesn't work. He doesn't want it. And he doesn't take vaccination. It's a huge country, one of the biggest countries in the American continent. So how would a politician can take people backward from scientific timber? You can see an example in Brazil. If a politician says that, well, you should not vaccinate, but drink cow's urine every day morning to protect yourself, I mean, well, there is a problem in that. So there are many politicians, at least 3 or 4 I know, and I mean, even including some parliament members, who would speak about consuming cow's urine to address problems like, COVID-19. So that's going against the principles of scientific temper. But instead, that's promoting superstition. But what I mean by promoting scientific attitude in the curriculum, which means that promoting children to understand science, not just science as a subject, but the scientific attitude, the scientific temperament. That is the most important thing, because unless you have scientific attitude and scientific temperament, you don't understand things, you don't evaluate things, you don't get things rightly. Therefore, promoting scientific temper should become a part of the curriculum. That's a policy decision that only a government can do. But beyond that, every policy making, governments are for 2 things. Number 1, for formulating policies and for implementing these policies. So at the policy making, at the implementation level, governments should take scientific attitude very seriously, because unless and until the population is not accepting scientific attitude, you cannot implement any scientific program. You cannot get people understand things, get people follow things in the right spirit of things. Therefore, it's part of the public understanding in a civilized society that a government should promote scientific attitude, scientific approach to get the population getting tuned to the modern world. Otherwise, they will remain in the past centuries.
So, do you think the free thought politics discourages superstition or get away with people's will with what they want?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, I'm sure I'm very, very happy that people have asked these kind of questions, because it's a serious question. Is a government responsible to fight superstition, or the government should allow people to follow whatever they want? I have faced this question in many interviews at different stages. Many people asked, well, if people want superstition, what are your rights to take away their superstition? Why do you want to take it away from them? And why don't they follow whatever they want? If they feel good, if it gives a feel-good atmosphere for them, why don't they simply follow superstition? What's the business of other people to say that, well, you should not be superstitious? It's their right, freedom to be superstitious, is one argument which is in currency. But look, the whole question is, government is an agency, or the political power is a position where you are not simply promoting or demoting superstition, but you should stand for facts, evidence-based things. So government need not get into discouraging superstitions. That should be left for social change organizations and educational institutions, because government need not take up everything possible, but they should be supported, if not discouraged. So what the government's responsibility should be, if somebody is promoting superstition, blind belief, and taking people to ignorance, that can be stopped. If somebody promotes witchcraft to solve a problem, there can be agencies that can stop them. If somebody goes for a not dangerous superstition for a private belief, state should not interfere, because state has no right to go into the freedom of people. That is why this work is to be divided between the state and the social change, the activists. Because state cannot interfere into the freedom of people even when they practice superstition. If somebody says that I want to go with my astrology, I want to look into my horoscope, can a state say that no, you should not? Can a state do that? No. A state cannot do that, and state should not do that also. Because if anybody wants to follow horoscope, well, that's their private freedom. But it shall be the scientific community, it shall be the educational institutions, it shall be the social change agents who would be telling people, explaining people using the public media as well as the private area of communication that this is absurd and there is no need to follow astrology or horoscope. One should discourage them. People should be persuaded out of these beliefs. It should not be forced. If any idea, even if howsoever right it is, if you try to impose upon people against their will by a political decision, it can counter back. It can bounce back. So therefore, I would say that the government should not promote any superstition. Governments should stand on principles of scientific knowledge, on empirical evidences and facts, and they should stand based on evidence-based things, not on hearsay or blind beliefs. But if private people want to follow some superstition which they have been following for some generations, states should not interfere it if it is not affecting other people's freedom to denounce it or campaign against it. Because at the end of the day, all the superstitions are dangerous for public welfare, and that should go. But there should be a difference, a distinction involved, that the state should not be a kind of imposing any kind of worldview on the people, and that should be freedom of the people. That's a thin line between what the state should do and the state should not do. I would say that the state has to stand for evidence-based things only. Non-evidence-based things should be rejected by the state. But if somebody practices a superstition, if it is not violating the rights of other people and damaging the social order, well, state has no right to interfere into that. That needs persuasion, education, and communication by scientific people.
Right. So there are so many discriminations in our society on the basis of religion, on the basis of, say, economic status, on poverty, and which you can find like everywhere. So how do you think that we can end all this discrimination?
Well, the right political solution is based on the most advanced political ideas the society has developed. Rationalism is not only speaking about science and scientific attitude, but also whatever the civilization has achieved over the centuries is also part of our understanding and correction, which has been going on through centuries. And that is also part of rationalism. When we speak about tolerance as a great value, that has nothing to do with science. The fundamental law of science would be survival of the fittest. But we would go for an idea which has been developed by our value system, the new value system that humans have developed, that we have to care for the last person. We have to hear the voice of the last lone voice. Democracy is defined. Earlier, democracy was mainly electing the ruler. You know, the classical Plato's view about democracy. Plato was one of the premier persons who thought about democratic structures, but he thought it in a different way, which also Karl Popper has been insisting that his positions have justified modern dictatorships. The position that Plato has taken was very simple. He said, it's not everybody's duty to govern. Only experts should govern. There should be three classes in the society. One, the people who are producing things, and the people who are working to produce our food, our clothes, our housing, our social well-being, and all these kind of things. Other set of people who should be protecting us, the soldiers, the military. The third set of people should be the ruling people. And who shall be the ruling people? They should be the most intelligent people, most wise people, which should be identified not on the basis of your birth and family, but on your skills and capacity. And Plato said, children should be separated from their parents so that they can be independently judged about their capacity and grown. And he even said that For example, then they should elect a person whom he called the philosopher king. The philosopher king should be not only very able person, but also very modest person, who should be very simple person, who should be totally dedicated to the city state. City state was the kind of nationhood that he thought. So this was a kind of idea. He also insisted that it shall be a male or female. Imagine those times. The philosopher king can be a male or female, according to Plato. So that was the idea that he developed. But this idea has, in a way, sanctified the idea of responsible oligarchy, which means some people who think that they are the most responsible people, they know how to govern, and they are the chosen people. Those kind of people, for example, many emperors believe that they are the right people to do what they're doing. So modern democracy is an ongoing, it's a result of an ongoing process. This process is also part of correcting the society, which is also part of free thought and rationalism. So it does not limit ourselves to science and scientific attitude, but also modernizing the society and transforming the society to a better situation. We had theocracy earlier, where people believed that the god has been, the king has been the representative of the god, and he is ruling for the gods. And before that, the priest and the ruler was the same. So this all changed. This transformation is also growth of an understanding that things have to change. So the free thought movement, for example, when it came up, was also fighting against the traditional belief that the state should be part of the religion, and religion should, control the political system. That has been like that in Europe. That has been there everywhere in the world. There have been different forms of religious authorities that control the political course, and the liberation from the religious powers for the political movement, and that has been the free thought movement, and that has been part of the democratic process, and that has been the contribution of the rationalist idea about politics. So when we think about changing a society, how do we address problems? I would suggest that for a government should not be tied up with the fine details of the program, in my opinion, because a government should have a broad policy framework only, and it shall be addressing, for example, the major issues of any society. For example, if there is poverty, poverty should be a major issue for the government to handle. If there is underemployment, that should be, or unemployment, that should be a major issue for the government to take over. If there is other social issues, other political issues, other issues connected with our life, that should be the matter that the state should consider. But when they consider this, imagine most of the people who are elected leaders and are in charge of certain political positions are not experts of those subjects. The classical Plato idea that to become a person who repair a shoe, you need training. To become a politician, you do not need any training. You just want the support of the people or support of the right political party. But why don't we find a situation that the politicians, of course, the policy making, the politicians should take the initiative, but the experts on these subjects should be consulted on every major issue. For example, if there is a dam to be made, one good example, there can be two opinions. This dam is not good. It can have ecological big problems, or it is very good for irrigation. Of course, there are two sides. On these two sides, there are pros and cons. Experts on different sides, ecology experts should speak about that, and the other experts of demographic structures, they should speak about that situation. And there should be discussions. And this discussion should be in the public forum. On the basis of it, on every major policy matter, there can be public opinion sought, and people should be given the right and wrong by experts of each subject. There can be public debates. There can be discussions. And in modern times, you know how easy it could be. For example, the Swiss idea of referendum is something of this sort. Any major decision to be implemented, It's not the wisdom of the politician or the great program of the political party, but the proposal that somebody has made, which is good or bad, is discussed by experts, and the various options, option 1, option 2, or if there is an option 3, are put forth to the people to decide. Then this is discussed publicly by experts and other people of interest, and it should be in the public domain, in televisions or in other forums. They should be discussed. People should argue, understand, estimate, critically evaluate. The critical evaluation is not only on matters of spiritual things, but also on actual political things also. Do you need this dam now, or do you have another alternative? You can have critical thinking on that. And that can be discussed in a society, and that can be argued, and argumentative positions can be taken. And finally, there can be an voting, a referendum. With modern times, it's very easy. You have to identify yourself with your credentials, and you can do it online. And what's the majority opinion, that should be followed. And the government should not be too much bothered about a policy that they wish they should do, but they should follow after consideration by the people and after critical evaluation by the people. What they want is to be implemented. A government should be an agency to implement the considered view of the people. And the considered view will come, only expert opinions are given to people. And if it is on public scrutiny, and if it is evaluated critically, the critical thinking that we speak when it comes on every major policy matter, the governments need not be the wisdom holders or philosopher kings, but would be implementators of public opinion, which is formulated by critical evaluation after hearing all sides. And experts should speak all different sides. That's a kind of good democracy where problems of poverty, for example, the people who are hungry also should be able to speak how this should be addressed. People who are uneducated also should be able to speak how this, why they are at the sidelines. They should be able to make their opinion, or people who speak for them should be able to make their opinion. So every policy has to be addressed. When, one we have a common goal, for example, if there is poverty, what are the reasons of the poverty to be identified and how to tackle it? There can be a policy proposal, and there can be a counter policy proposal by experts. And this different proposal, like we take a decision in a professional organization, this opinion making can be handed over to people. They should not blindly follow things. That is where critical thinking as a fundamental approach has to be developed, not only in matters of religion and faith, but also in political decision making. And that process can enrich our democracy to a very higher level and will bring in better results to address poverty, discrimination. All these kind of things can be addressed with such an approach. All discrimination should go. Nobody should be discriminated in any model society, not on the basis of caste and religion, but also not on the basis of their area, their origins, their families, their education, their economic standards. People should not be discriminated. The rich and poor, see, the higher educated person or the lower education person should both have equal rights to have good living. The uneducated person should not be deprived of quality life. And with science and technology developed to this extent, and agricultural production multiplied thousandfolds from the last few centuries, why cannot we address, for example, poverty or hunger? There is hunger in this world. 1/3 of the whole global population is extremely hungry. And we have excess production. Half the grains that we produce are gone waste without storage system or transportation. And how can we address this question? In Africa, for example, there is no warehousing is the major problem. There is enough production. Production is not the problem. Many people think that food production is the major problem. No, globally we produce more food than what we all require. There is excess production is sometimes pulled down in sea. We cannot store excess production, but it's not distributed. It's not reaching people. What are the policy things that we require to change it? What are the options? Let experts speak. Food experts speak, and food distribution experts speak, and let nutrition experts speak, and policymakers make options, and the pros and cons of both should be thrown to people. Their opinion should be considered. In the public forum, for example, nowadays everything can be discussed so easily, people can articulate any position, and all these problems should be understood with a clear understanding that no kind of discrimination should be possible in a modern world, and nobody should be deprived of anything. You know, in 1960s, the whole global food production has gone 200 times more. And if what we have been, producing, the growth rate of food production in 200 years before that, and if you take in just 1960s, it has grown 200 times than the 200 years beforehand. Still, there is not food for the hungry people. What is wrong? So there should be policies coming up, and that should be discussed. And food should not be a problem for people. Everyone should have food. Everyone should have comfortable life standard. And if after all this scientific development and after all this fine production that we have, if we cannot achieve that, there is something wrong with our systems. And that has to be changed. In a welfare state, in a rationalist state, I would say that every single person should have a natural right to get good food and good accommodation and good living. And human pursuit should be for better things, to enjoy the life, to improve the quality of life, and to do better things with this life that we have.
So, what are your views on freedom of the individual or privacy of an individual? What should be the level of freedom that should exist?
Freedom, I would say, would be next to food or before food. That is the only question that I have in my thought. I think that's one of the fundamental of any human being. Freedom to do what one wants to do. What's the limit of it? We speak about free thought, but what about freedom to do things? If you are in a society, a caste-ridden society, the caste has a certain set of rules. You cannot change it. If you are changing it, you are isolated. If you are in a family, there is a family that decides everything. There should be normally in every home, there is a patriarch or a matriarch who would decide for other people. The individual's freedom to choose what one wants, to what dress one should wear, to what course one should go and study as a student, what job one should do, what book one should read, what movie one should see, to start with that. And where to live, how to live, whom to marry, whether one has to marry or live together. All this freedom should be for any individual possible. But not only that, much beyond that. To choose if one should have a faith or not, or change a faith. You are born to Hindu parents, and tomorrow if you want to follow Zoroastrian religion, if you find that's good, you should have the freedom to do that. If you want to follow Chinese ascetic faith, well, you should have the freedom to do that. If you want to go out of any religion and live as a free individual, you should have the freedom to do that. But you don't have that freedom. But not only on the matters of religion, on political matters, if the family has a political position, you cannot have a different position. The family would not tolerate it, or the society would not tolerate it. If you speak something against the mainstream belief of a society, you would be isolated, you will be sidelined, you will be cornered, you can be attacked. If you are in Bangladesh and speak for freedom of thought and scientific communication, there can be somebody coming with a sachet and kill you, like it happened to 16, 17 people. Or if you are in some Arabian countries, and if you are an apostate, which means, and if you are leaving your faith, Islam, then you can be beheaded by law. If a foreigner speak about non-faith, he will be only thrown out of the country. But if a person who was born there, if he is an apostate, he can be executed in 16 countries now. So every kind of freedom is challenged. The way one should dress, even such small freedom are not accepted in many societies. So this has changed in many countries. The individual freedom is taken as a great value, and it's officially it's accepted as a great value after the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. But still, many of these basic things about human rights are not even considered by many political systems. It's not even part of the idea about freedom for many people. And regarding privacy, now worldwide, privacy is a major issue. When we use social media, all our informations are taken away by some companies. To what extent is possible? In Europe, there is a very strong conviction that people should not be leaving their private information about what sites they search. It's nobody's business to get it. But certain sites collect this information, not for following you, but to sell their products. Look what sites you are watching. If you're watching baby clothes, then you will be immediately shown 100 baby cloth advertisements. If you're watching a philosophical book, then you get all philosophical books on the sidelines. Means you are being watched. Algorithms are clearly following you. And now there are laws in Europe. You have to accept what all privacy breaching is permitted. You have a big option. Normally it's a big list. Nobody would read and they would say, okay, all cookies accepted. One clicks, but one has to give only the basic necessary information that can be given. That sometimes some information is to be given. For example, the location. But even location, there is fine difference that the specific location you need not be given. Maybe the country of origin, one has to ask for the language to be provided with the information. But the very fundamental information only can be taken now. That is why Facebook, for example, how it was used. This information, how it was used for political campaign was a big issue. And Zuckerberg has to go to the American Congress and answer questions. About the big social engineering patterns that are developing now with the computer bots, software bots, trying to understand what are your interests, what are the patterns of your social commitments can be identified, and that can be fetched properly for political decision making. Therefore, the political opinion that you make, the voting that you make, are sometimes dramatically influenced without you knowing it by providing you information that can be taken you to a different direction. That is why privacy is a very important thing. It's not only the privacy that if parents look, if children are watching porno sites, it's beyond that. That's not the question. That also should not be any issue of any parents, because after a child become an adult, the allowed age to understand such things, it's the freedom of an individual to do whatever they want. And I have not watched my children if they watch porno or not when they have been adolescents. It was none of my business. I had a very clear understanding about that. Whether they watched or not, I think most of the youngsters would watch such things. And that's okay for me, in my view. But it's whether it's okay for me or not. But you have no right to monitor people, to see what they're liking. And is it according to your value system or not? It's their decision. Once they formulate their ideas, their privacy is that's a question of individual privacy. And what food you eat, you need not tell anybody. That's your freedom. And you need not even explain to anybody. And what song you listen, you need not tell anybody. That's your freedom. And what you watch, it's your freedom. So this is the primary level freedom. But one has to go beyond that to stop big companies on the internet taking your private information for commercial purposes and using it to influence you even politically, or your buying decisions has to be stopped. Privacy is one of the major value system that we have developed over centuries. We didn't have privacy earlier. When we have been living as nomads, with everybody was known to everybody, and every little thing was open for everybody. That's not the question. What's the food that you eat? It's your privacy. What kind of sexual orientation you have? It's your privacy. You need not explain to anybody. Nobody should not ask anybody. And what kind of books you want to read? What kind of music you want to hear? These all are your private things. And to the extent you decide to tell, nobody, not even computer bots that follow you, has a right to get into your privacy. More and more people are coming into privacy. I'm sure in the coming generations and coming years, we will have furthermore understanding about privacy, and maybe we will still go forward to insist on our privacy to a higher level. So this may still go forward, because most of these values, if 100 years or 200 years back, if you speak about privacy, it was not a big issue for people. But now it's an issue because people understand it's not only individual decision or choice making, but also unknown algorithms following us is also violation of privacy. And the understanding about privacy is still growing. The value system based on that would still grow, and we have to still improve, because I would always say that the value system is not static. There is no Moses who set everything for every time. There is no Manu who set for everything for any time. Nothing of that sort. There is no statement of any moral guru or religious leader or any ancient text that says our value system at this moment. We have changed. We are modernizing. We are further going forward. And in the coming years, our value system will further change, still modify, and which could be not much beyond our imagination at this moment. A society's transforming value system based on a humane understanding about things. And that is what is happening, and that should be respected. And privacy and respect for individual liberty are integral part of it.
What about human rights? What all comes under human rights?
That's well, you know that the French Revolution has set up a new standards about human rights. The American constitution making has set up a new value system. I mean, new ideas about human rights. Freedom as a great value has been developing from American Revolution to French Revolution to the British developments at that time. I mean, there's a huge development. British movement for the democratic advancements and the ideas of freedom or liberty that has developed has advanced the ideas of human rights. The right of the workers, for example, the socialist movement and even the radical communist movements have a contribution, despite the large criticism many of us have about that movement. It has a contribution in the early years to identify the right of the workers. What many things that we have in the Western world now as the right of the workers has been to counter the campaigns of the 19th century socialist movement. So these all are part of human rights. And the present day biggest value in connection with human rights is determined in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Every individual and every people have their right to decide about many things. They have the right to believe, worship, their faith has a guarantee, conscience, to have your own conscience, your own understanding, to reject any faith, to decide about your identity. Everything is part of the human rights. And one should actually read this Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which is still a wonderful document in my view. But it has to still improve, in fact, because there are other rights now, which the present day times are speaking about a lot of other values. One value, for example, what we have been speaking, you all must have heard about the big controversy with Richard Dawkins' one statement about the gender positions. The gender position, it's a new understanding about gender reality. One later understanding about gender is not your sex, whether you're a male, female, or transsexual. That's not what is gender. Gender is in your mind. That's a new understanding. For example, a person who is a male till now, tomorrow can feel that a female is developing in him. A man who otherwise has biologically, he is absolutely a female, or she is absolutely a female, but she can have elements of the presence of male in her. This is a kind of, it's your mind. And what changes it? It's not very clearly understood. But that has to be respected. It's a very latest position which is in discussion in the value system. It's not about giving, right of the transgenders as another gender is no. That was a question which we discussed in the last decades. But this is a very latest thing. The gender in you, though you are a male, there is another gender in you. And if you realize it at the age of 50, can you decide whether you are a male or female? Is it you who decide what gender you belong to? Or is it your biological structures that decides your gender? This is a major question now. So there are a lot of psychologists very seriously articulating on this question. And Richard Dawkins, he has taken up this issue with a sense of humor and put it for discussion. The American Humanist Association felt it highly offensive, and they have even taken away an award that they have given to him, telling that that's a violation of human rights. So that's how the idea about rights are growing. In 1940s, that Alan Turing, the founder of modern computers, he was a gay. But being a gay was a crime there at that time. He was the person who helped Britain to use computers to win the war. And he had a great contribution, but he was identified as a homosexual, as a gay. And the British law at that time would give him two opportunities, either imprisonment or chemical castration. You have only two options. He opted chemical castration to correct the person. Now, there are still corrective clinics are there, but they didn't understand at that time that it's an orientation that you cannot even decide. But Alan Turing was chemically castrated and he was depressed. The great scientist who developed modern computers suicided. So that was 1940s. The British monarch has apologized some years back to Alan Turing symbolically for the mistake the political system has done. That was a recognition of. So in 60 years or 70 years, the idea has transformed. Similarly, the gender idea is a new idea. So there can be new ideas that would be developing further, or new understanding of horizons of human. The identity of a human can still grow and further develop, and the human rights can still, the yardsticks of human rights can still grow further. For example, many things, the right of people to choose a religion is accepted. The right of a person to choose their gender, for example, is nowhere discussed in a human right. Right of a person to choose their sexuality is agreed now universally, almost in most developed countries. In European Union, if a country does not allow this right of people to decide their sexuality or follow, and if they are persecuted because of that homophobia, if that is part of the system, they won't get even membership in the European Union. That is a criterion, seriously. But beyond that, this is a new development. Still, for example, about religious freedom, about social freedom, about the freedom to follow things, about what you have to do, there can be new values coming in the coming years. The human rights is a growing thing. So what was human right 200 years back was not the right to be an atheist. Now it's a right. Your conscience is respected everywhere. To right to do things as you want, to denounce caste system and marry somebody from a different caste was not tolerated in the Indian value system. Some 100 years back. Now, still there are panchayats that will catch people and kill them, but legally at least they are protected, and that's happening. There are mixed marriages happening everywhere. And so the values are changing. Accordingly, what is a right of a person is still growing. The horizon of the right is growing and growing and growing, and it will grow further.
So, in the free thought politics, do you expect some change in the value system and morality and laws? Like, should it be different from what it is currently?
Yeah, that's a continuation. Actually, that's a good question. That's a continuation from what I've been speaking. Because when the value system is changing, when the rights, what is the right of an individual? What's the right of a community? What's the right of a society? When the idea is growing, naturally, the governments have a responsibility to recognize it based on scientific understanding about it, not some crazy ideas about things. For example, if somebody says that the right, it should not be violating other rights also. So, for example, what's the right of a child, and what's the right of a, what's the time when a child can decide for itself? What till what time the parent has a right? So these all things are to be discussed and decided by experts in these subjects based on evidences and scientific knowledge. And legal system should modify itself to get in tune with the new system. You know that in India, uh, many laws are still, in India, I'm telling the example of India because I'm quite familiar about that. We have a criminal law that came from 1860 and a constitution that came in 1950. When India got independence, the criminal laws did not change. It still followed the earlier British criminal laws, penal code of 1850. And the only thing that was considered was if the fundamental rights, if anything that violates the fundamental rights of the constitution, which is the most unchangeable part in our constitution, that law can be challenged in the constitutional bench and that can become null and void. So this law has a lot of things that is part of the Victorian value system. You can be imprisoned if two gays decide to live together. You can be imprisoned. There can be a case. And there was a Delhi High Court interfering into that and making a decision that, come on, you cannot interfere. So the world has changed. But who has appealed against it? The government of India has appealed against that. And the religious leaders joined that. And now the Supreme Court washed its hands and said that, well, we don't take an opinion, a position on that. It's a question of the parliament to make a legislation. It's a putting the ball to the parliament. So parliament, I would say, it has to make a legislation because worldwide it's understood properly. In most of the world nations, it's accepted, and there should be a parliament decision coming from the policy making body. So there should be legislations coming according to the society's growth and the understanding about human rights, understanding about the new value system that's coming up. When it is evidence based and it's standing for a long time and the foundations are correct, and there shall be a responsibility of the state to make new legislations accordingly. A state shall not be the custodian or protector of the tradition or all values or what was there existing earlier or our old culture. The culture is transforming, the society is transforming, the value system is transforming, and there should be space for people who want to follow what they want, including the ancient cultures, provided it's not violating others' rights. They should have that right. But those who want to transform themselves into a modern human being should have a possibility to do that by the state or the political system understanding and adapting to the new system and becoming more accommodative to the growing value system or growing morality based on a humane value system that has to be there. So that should be a part of the political process. That is an important thing, I would say, in the free thought politics.
You were just talking about laws. So laws are generally for punishing the criminal. So what is your approach on laws existing for correcting people? So what is the role of the law and how do you consider law to be?
Laws of two, in ancient times, laws have mainly one role: to protect the authority of the governments, the power. If anybody challenges the power center, that was countered by the laws. Laws were mainly made for that. But not only that, do you know in Roman Empire, if anybody who is able, who can grow to be a potential emperor in the future, if one has the capacity and identified at a younger age, there was a norm there to send government representatives or the emperor's representatives to locate such people and blind them so that they would not become challengers. You know the famous story in Indian mythology, Ekalavya story. The teacher trains a person for shooting arrows, and he is a person who is not supposed to get such a knowledge by the caste hierarchy. But finally, he excels in that, and he asks, what shall be the remuneration, my dakshina, which is a fee to the teacher? He says, your thumb. And he gives it, which means he expertised it, but he cannot use it. And that was celebrated as an absolute dedication of a disciple. That is a part of, that's celebrated, and that's told. That's how a student should be, a disciple should be. The human expertise is to be fully developed, and that has to be followed, and no law shall be there to stop people doing something. For example, if somebody wants to come to political power, somebody wants to question the political process or the laws or the policies of a government, in many authoritarian systems, there'll be some laws to trap them immediately. You can be called a terrorist, or there can be, you can be immediately cornered with some laws which can be very dictatorial, and you can be put inside. Most governments all over the world, try to make such laws to counter opponents. Or sometimes these laws are used out of proportion and out of context to handle a different thing. I know how, for example, the India's election commissioner, former election commissioner T.N. Seshan, has written about how he has handled Sheikh Abdullah, the then Kashmir chief minister, or technically prime minister. Okay, he was arrested and he was taken to a guest house in Tamil Nadu in Nilgiris, and T.N. Seshan happened to be the district collector there, and he has to sign a document to completely agreeing the India government's position. This he has written in his autobiography. And Seshan, what he did, how politics is used or laws are used, it's a good example. What he has done was, everything was comfortable in the guest house for Sheikh Abdullah for some days. Then he's still not getting 40 days of past and he's not budging. So he was asked by the central government to make him accept it without forcing anything personally. So Seshan decided to stop water to the guest house. So he's in trouble. He cannot go to even toilet. You cannot flush the toilet. 3 days have passed and he makes complaints. So technical error. So who can decide that there is a technical error? That's a law misused. Then the electricity was going intermittently. Then there is darkness. There is no light. So I think Seshan writes, he understood what is happening and he agreed to sign the document that Government of India wanted. This is what Seshan has written. So many people who are in executive positions at different places, they know how to exert a law to get what you want. This is something that laws should not be. If anybody misuses a law for gaining something which is not in the right tune, that should be seen as a crime. In many governments, if a politician is to be tamed, one can put a lot of charges against him, or the intelligence can collect some information and show him. Intelligence is mainly for security. Show him how it can be explosive and how it can be damaging for him, or butts to the political position that the authorities want. That's how many laws are used. But these are misuses of law. And whenever these kind of things are identified, now you can question it. That's the fourth stage. The media would take up that. And that would be a big issue nowadays because such things are taken as an offense nowadays. But beyond that, the laws per se criminalizes a lot of things. Many laws criminalizes, for example, if you abort, in many countries, it's a crime. It's a choice of the person who carries a child. The choice is not respected there. So it's criminalized. So people go into, if one has to have an abortion, one would go either for illegal ways and get in trouble, and it's more dangerous. In many Latin American countries, this situation is there. You cannot, even when you are pregnant with a rape, you cannot abort. That's seen as a crime in some countries. But forget about rape. Even in a marriage, when you decide, even the husband does not want, if somebody wants it, it's my body, my right. You cannot do that in many countries. You need a lot of procedures to come to that. And many laws, many things are illegal and it's a crime. There can be, therefore, you can be arrested. Selling vegetables on a four-wheeler is a crime because you don't have a license. But you need certain laws. Otherwise, everybody would be selling, some vegetables on a, rolling, bicycle in the street. So there will be traffic problem. So there should be laws, but clear laws that define things. For example, there can be a licensing. If you know, the Arab Spring has broken out in Tunisia because one street vendor was taken away. His vegetables were taken away by the police and he immolated himself. And from there sparked a political struggle against the authorities, and the Tunisian Spring Revolution was beginning from there. So the kind of feelings of people and the kind of requirements of people are to be understood. And laws should be considerate, given the possibility of, of course, what are the, why, for example, a certain law is important. There should be a reason. Only to do that, only to avoid that. And decriminalizing as much as things possible is one of the major policies one should have in a civilized society. You have to decriminalize many unnecessary things that are crime now. You know about the famous story that in Netherlands, that was in 1994, I think, I've been invited to speak in a conference in Amsterdam, and I met a professor, Professor Rob Tailman. He was a professor of sociology in the Utrecht University of Utrecht Free University, and he has been in front of a campaign for two things. Number one, decriminalizing prostitution, then decriminalizing marijuana. These are the two things he was campaigning. His position was ridiculed by a lot of people. There was huge discussion there at that time. But it was as a test case in Utrecht city, these two were tried. For example, decriminalizing, lighter substance abuse. The abuse of substance, for example, somebody using marijuana or lighter, narcotic things. Anybody can be arrested. When this is then this is a crime. Those who want to use it, they will go in any way to obtain it. And when they try to obtain it illegally, there will be a mafia that protects it. It brings, the prices would go up. The mafia would protect it. And then this will come in a secret way. And there will be crimes connected with that. It's a huge empire of mafia and crime and everything for such a silly thing that if somebody is getting a little kick. And if that is not damaging the person, why shouldn't people allow to have minor narcotics as an entertainment thing? Canada has, not only decriminalized, they have legalized it recently. But in many countries cannot even imagine. In India, you know that during Holi festival, people use bhang. It's officially sold everywhere. Bhang is a kind of marijuana only. And so one way of handling these kind of things is to identify. The idea of Rob Tailman at the time was there are people who are dependent on this stuff. There are hard-depending people on narcotics. They can further go into harder narcotics. So what's the way to stop that? Number one is decriminalizing it and legalizing it and making it available in the medical shops. But you have to show your identity to buy it, but you can buy it. But there is a record maintained. Again, another question of privacy. The laws are very complicated. So this information would show, and people who are dependent on that were given free shots. In Germany, in Netherlands, in many European countries, you can see in the city there are vans parked in the main city center. And the entrance is in a place that public cannot see. And if you are an addict, and if you cannot survive without your narcotic drug, you know what's the danger? You can be violent. You are not a reason for becoming a narcotic addict. It's also certain, physiological position that many people drink, but not everybody is becoming an alcoholic. Only very, very few people are becoming alcoholics. But if you're an alcoholic, you need alcohol. That's to be provided to you. Otherwise, it's dangerous. So that being a separate issue than the right to drink. Similarly, the right to take lighter narcotics and making it available to those people who are dependent on it at a free cost. You can go in Hamburg city. If you go, you can see this. I've taken pictures and I've written an article about that also. One can go into that and get a shot and go. If you don't get that, and for a simple heroin shot, you would go violent. You go even, so violent to the extent that you can kill somebody, because you are not deciding, your cells are demanding it. So you have to be treated at one side, but that's another thing. But you have to address the issue. That's decriminalizing narcotic drugs. That's one policy which is coming as a major policy worldwide. Decriminalizing. Anyway, there is prostitution that existed from times immemorial. But when it is illegal, there is a mafia protecting it. It's a crime. And you are exposed to a lot of dangers. Whereas, if those people who are in prostitution, the pimping and the racketing and everything is taken off. If an individual person decides to be a prostitute, one can do that. One needs a license, and that should be in the system properly, and that be monitored, and these people should have a medical test regularly. And the streets are not dark and red color, but they are bright light, and everything is protected by police, not by mafia. The crimes will come down, and even prostitution will come down. That was Rob Tailman's revolutionary idea. That was practiced in Utrecht city, and that was a success. After 5 years, they evaluated and they found that it's a success, and that is extended to the whole of Netherlands now. Many other countries have followed. Even Germany has followed that. Many other countries, Switzerland has followed it, and many countries have followed it. The decriminalization of unnecessary things. Any kind of law can be used. Anything that you do, there can be a crime somewhere. You can do anything. You can find something criminal in your activity. You can just laugh loudly in a street. You can say that you have made public disturbance. That's a crime. Anything can be a crime. And so if you decriminalize it and reduce it for arresting people and persecuting people, and if some certain things are to be discouraged by law, more on fine than on arresting people. And for example, if you cross the zebra line when it is red color, you are risking your life. But if you're caught, should you be taken to a police station and arrested, or you should be given a ticket to pay 1,000 rupees? So that would be more effective. Or other things. For example, if you violate traffic, you should be taken to a jail. Of course, if you did not kill anybody, that's a different thing. Or suspend your driving license for 3 months. So there are many ways to decriminalize and make it less criminal activity. People would like to do things legally if it's not affecting other people. If you eat pork, for example, and a Muslim in Saudi Arabia, you are a criminal. But you can buy pork in the United Arab Emirates in the stores, but for non-Muslims, it's available there. But if you're a Muslim, it's a crime if you buy it. It's very simple like that. And in India, in many states, if you eat beef, you're doing a crime. If you live in Kerala or West Bengal, it's not a crime. It's allowed. One of the interesting things, BJP's election promise in Kerala was we would not ban beef in Kerala. That was part of the election manifesto. Because if you imagine a person in Kerala having a little lunchbox with the beef and crosses the border traveling in a train and reaches another state in Uttar Pradesh, and if it's located, keeping beef would be a serious crime. You can get several years of imprisonment, rigorous imprisonment. But you need not even wait for imprisonment. Maybe the crowd will beat you to death. Laws are different. So what is criminal in one place is not crime in another place. So why don't we decriminalize the maximum things? The only necessary things, extremely necessary things. Murder should be criminalized. Stealing should be criminalized. Of course, in any kind of corruption should be criminalized. But simple things of normal life. If you marry a person of a different religion without 3 months' notice, you can be arrested. It's a new law in Uttar Pradesh. I mean, so these are making more and more things criminal. The idea, what I'm proposing, is making more and more things non-crime. I mean, what things that are not crime, but part of a new way of life or a different way of life, bring it down and less number of crimes, clearly defined what's the crime and what's the punishment, what's the consequence, and people are told, and people should have an idea, because sometimes when you for example, those who travel in a train, you know that if you drink a beer while traveling, it's a crime. Many people do not know it. Youngsters normally drink a beer, so somebody can catch you. But what happens normally is that the person is not arrested. The policeman who comes wants immediately a tip of 100 rupees or 500 rupees for that. So that's the problem with crime. The more crimes, the more things criminalized, there will be corruption connected with the crime. There should be specific, very less number of things as crime, which is the most important things only. More and more things should be decriminalized, and very less things should be crime, and that should be easier, and that should be more humane. That's based on a tolerant worldview.
So, in the democratic society, since religion already exists, religion can influence the political society. But how can you stop them to influence the political course?
Well, that's a serious question. Well, religion is a reality. It exists. Religion should not influence the state policies. There should be a separation mark there. It shall not be the religion that decides politics, but of course, a religion can try to influence a political opinion. That probably will be very difficult to influence. One can say that religion should do matters of their faith, but these kind of things are to be separated. But all the same, when religions exist and as a collective position, a collective bargaining position, they may still try to influence. But if a new value system emerges that when religion interferes into politics, that should be seen as something that is not respected. That's not fitting to the modern world. If there is a new value system that is inculcated in the society, religion will be ashamed, and people will be shaming religion publicly in media everywhere when they try to do that. Still, as individuals in religion, they can still try to influence political opinions, but religion as an organization or as a position cannot and should not influence
खोलिए
the
मत, आप
government
मच्छर अंदर
function.
करके चली जाते हैं. मैंने अभी बंद किया.
Um,
Kitchen.
okay, then fundamentally, the religion, I would say that the people belonging to religion can have opinion, can have political opinion, political articulation, or they would be influencing or trying to influence political positions. Any opinion groups, any faith group or any ideology group can try to influence political positions. That we cannot avoid. But that can be countered easily also, because one can point it out that look, it's not a genuine position, it's a vested interest of a certain kind of institution on the basis of their private interest that can be exposed, but not by suppressing this opinion. That is why opinion should not be suppressed, opinion should be open, and all religions and people belonging to all religions should be able to speak out their views, speak out their opinions, and that should be, that should be countered, or that should be treated on the crucible of common sense.
So, what are your views about scientific education?
Well, that's something which we have many times discussed. Scientific education is very important. We have scientific education. I mean, science is a subject and is part of our education system. But scientific attitude and scientific temper is something very different. That is to be part of the education system, and that's where state has to interfere very seriously, because critical thinking and scientific attitude should be developed as part of the education system and should not be for educating the children, but for example, maybe the parliament members, when they're elected, should get an orientation course on critical thinking and understanding things on the basis of scientific understanding. These kind of things are to be treated very seriously, without prejudices, without the private notions or interest groups, but in the interest of a political system. If you want a better society, if you want a very developing society, if you want a humane system, people should be able to understand things from early childhood. Instead of the religious schools and religious institutions that are trying to grab into the mindset of children, they should be asked and promoted to think openly, think critically, and to become tolerant to other worldviews. To, one of the ways that I would always say that, many people say that religion should not be taught in schools. I normally feel that religion should be taught in schools, but the curriculum content should be decided by secular people. Because the moment you understand about other religions and other faiths, and the critique of religion also part of the understanding, your problem of rigidity would automatically go, because no wisdom should be taken out from the people. Understanding a religion is not studying the religious text. That's faith. Faith cannot be taught, but religion historically and what's its cultural role can be taught to students. But not only one religion, but all religions, and everything connected with faith and its growth can be taught to children, and that should be taught. One of the best ways to develop a tolerant society is teaching faith of other people and what they believe. So without that knowledge, if you come out with a closed worldview, it will be very difficult for you to come out, even to understand and even coexist with other people. Even an atheist should study the basics of other religions, because if you don't have it, you cannot live in a society where we all have to coexist. We criticize religion, there should be critical inquiry, there should be denouncing of superstitions, denouncing of all these traditional unnecessary faiths that follow us, but still there are people who are believing them, and we have to study to coexist with them. And then only we can educate them to coexist with us.
So I am a Kathak dancer, and you are also a Kathakali artist. So it's an art form and a body rhythm. So do you find scientific value in these art?
Well, I should be asking this question is interesting. You are a Kathak dancer. You have been studying Kathak for a long time. And I've been studying Kathakali in my childhood. I mean, is it against the spirit of scientific understanding or rationalism, or the scientific attitude or the scientific worldview should keep away aesthetics and art and culture and everything? One of my friends, sometimes when I spoke about culture, he spoke that the only culture that he knows is agriculture. Uh, um, but the idea, because art is part of human culture, any form of art, any form of dance, any form of music, these are the primordial expressions of human feelings and human happiness and human, growth. The traditional, in the ancient world, the primates, they danced. There are clear evidences in the cave paintings that they've been dancing, they've been singing, they've been finding instruments. This has been part of the spontaneous. Even many advanced mammals respond to rhythms. That's inherent in us, and that has developed a lot of ideas about aesthetics. If aesthetics is, I know about people who say that, I mean, we don't need any more fiction, because the ancient texts are fiction and all fictions are dangerous. We don't need even Harry Potter, and we don't need modern novels, nothing, because these are only scientific texts. Imagine a society that everybody behaves like robots and think only scientific things, and they don't dance, they don't sing, and if they don't enjoy a cinema, how dull it would be. Rather, a modern civilized society based on freedom of thought should understand the value of art and culture. And in fact, there is a problem that many people see in art and culture. For centuries and centuries, these art and culture were in the custody of the then political system, then religious system. For example, many the Western classical music is all hymns of biblical or church songs. So therefore, should we denounce and throw away Western classical music? No. In fact, we should rather study it, because that has been a subject of it only. That has been a way to understand it only. That has been the topic of it only. You can further research on it. You can keep that as history and study it, understand it. All the same, you can further develop the art. The music has gone away from all these kind of things. The music has got new horizons in the world, and it has gone dramatic. The advanced music has gone away from religion. Dances have gone away from religion. But still, many stylized dance forms are connected with mythology. So what? When I was studying Kathakali in my childhood, my friends of my father used to ask him. I wanted to study Kathakali, and I was studying, and then, for example, when I was performing as a Hindu mythological characters, how would it be, fitting to a rationalist? Some people have asked. My father has been answering that. I still remember that. He said, if one performs as Krishna and understands that Krishna is just a character, he would be performing it better than a person who thinks that it's a divine character. If you're performing a Shakespearean character, do you have any problem? You don't have any problem. And if you're performing a modern play, you don't have any problem. You identify that as a character. Why don't you understand the mythology as mythology, stories, fiction? And then you would understand it better. This has actually helped me. This idea, I've been performing Kathakali in some 300, 400 stages. I've performed Kathakali in my childhood. I've been university, in the school competitions, I've been the best Kathakali dancer for years together. So, and I've performed Kathakali in many places. Later, when I was in Delhi, I was still interested. I'm fascinated with Kathakali, and I've been regular viewer of Kathakali in many places. And I became a member of the International Kathakali Center in Delhi. And I was a board member. When my father died on the night when we both have been in the board of the Kathakali Center, and that night was my father died. And later, I became the president of the International Kathakali Center in Delhi. For nearly 3-4 years, I was the president of it. When I was the president of the Kathakali Center, what I tried was, I never stopped. Many people thought, oh, this atheist coming and would stop our Kathakali stories. I didn't. In fact, I encouraged all these kind of things, and I promoted them to do all traditional Kathakali, because Kathakali is also an anti-status quo, dance form. That's another thing. But I've experimented modern things in Kathakali. Without touching the traditional Kathakali, I tried to make Shakespeare's Othello in Kathakali. Or Cupid and Suchet. It's a famous, French play based on a Roman mythology in Kathakali. Then I have done Kathakali based on a Nigerian contemporary play. All these kind of things are, one play, modern play by Onwume. Onwume is a professor in Wisconsin University in the United States. And she's a Nigerian, and she's, perhaps one day she would get Nobel Prize, very, very famous playwright. And her play, we made as a modern play and Kathakali. I directed the Kathakali play. And both were performed on one same stage. The modern play based on that, and the Kathakali on the other side. And people were asked to, critically evaluate how different these are and how expressions can be made in two different forms. So I would say that all traditional art, ancient paintings, the humanist movement from the paintings of all times, the humanist movement, not the modern humanist movement, humanism in the painting, or architecture, how it developed was a major breakthrough. In music and art and culture, there has been a major breakthrough. Like the Enlightenment movement in the ideas, because the humanist movement was for taking out all these kind of traditional faith for human faces we have brought, not the God's faces. So this has been a major change, and the modern growth of understanding the art is part of our cultural tradition. It's our wealth. It's a wealth, part of our civilization. Like when you make imagine a rationalist state emerges, will you demolish all the great architecture of the temples? In Tamil Nadu, will you demolish the Madurai Meenakshi temple? No. If you do that, and you are damaging the whole cultural heritage, you would be like the Taliban who demolished the Bamiyan statues. So come on, you cannot even, one should not even think about such things, that we denounce the ancient art and culture, because that's part of the whole tradition. UNESCO has a project of keeping the tradition and art and culture as it is. So they identify UNESCO heritage sites. Certain cities are heritage sites. Here in Estonia, the Tallinn Old City is a heritage site. In India, the Humayun's Tomb, the Red Fort, the Taj Mahal, all are heritage sites. Heritage sites means these are wealth of the humanity, the great wealth of the past, and that has to be maintained. Imagine who was the first Secretary General of UNESCO. That was Julian Huxley, who was an atheist. It was his idea. That is what we stand for. We stand for the keeping the cultural values. In Europe, when religions have gone, the traditional cathedrals and churches are not demolished. Sometimes they are taken as museums. When they could not support it, it was made museums, of course. But they are maintaining it. Government is giving grants to maintain it. And that should be done. I would not say that any kind of architecture that's part of our traditional culture should not go because the atheism prevails. And no kind of old art should be looked down. Rather, it should be more aggressively promoted, because we are the promoters of the good things of ancient culture. Anything that is ancient culture that is good for the human welfare should be taken as part of us. And I would say that for art and dance and all these kind of things, you can take out the religion out of it. You can see it as art, wash it clearly, and take the superstitions out of that. And that has been done everywhere. All these art forms were in temples only. That has come to the public domain now. We have taken a major superstition out of that. It came to people. It became public art. All these traditional arts that, for example, Kathakali or all these kind of things were only in the temples earlier. From 1950s, Kala Mandalam was established and it came out for public domain. You know, I can tell you another story. There is a drum which is known as Edakya in South India. Edakya is a very traditional drumming, which is very complicated, it's a string instrument and a percussion instrument, as well as a string, a percussion, and a wind instrument. So three things. There are holes, you're drumming, as well as there is a string with it. So you have to handle these three different things. And this was only performed in Kerala temples and never outside till 1957. Never ever in the whole history. And even now, only a particular caste, the Marar caste, perform Edakya performance. And when I was the president of Kathakali Center, the main Chanda drummer was a performer of Edakya also. I was fascinated. I asked him, why don't you come and teach me? And he was thrilled with the idea. And you know, when I was in Delhi, I spent 2 years every day to study, to perform Edakya. And I had a concert performed in the Kathakali Center for Edakya. When I came to Finland, that's another interesting story. I didn't take much of my personal belongings at that time. I didn't even take my personal clothes. With a friend, I have gone in the evening and purchased a couple of dresses and a pair of shoes and purchased a bag and made everything. And I've been flying. But I sent a person to my home to collect one thing, my Edakya. This was packed and I brought it. It's still here. And I still perform Edakya. So that's how I see traditional art. So traditional art is part of our culture and heritage, and we should feel that we have no right to damage anything that is great from the past. And we have to continue it and preserve it for the future like we got it from the past. And that is the approach of a civilized world.
Hmm. So there are so many ideas in a society, but public is not receptive to new ideas. People have resistance to that. How will the new society be open to new ideas? What's your idea on openness to new ideas?
I would say that many people have a phobia about new ideas or even new techniques. There is a phobia. Technophobia is, I mean, very, very popular. So, for example, if you speak, somebody speaking about artificial intelligence, immediately people say that, oh, I don't want to think about that, that everything is done by AI now. So, but societies that progress are responding to advancements of understanding and taking it for their better use. You know how, for example, in a few years we will have cars that will be driving without a driver. It's auto-driven cars are coming everywhere in the world. Next 15 years, that will be reality. There are researches going on in many universities that I know, technological universities, even in Finland, how to, people are sitting idle there in the car. How to make use of that time. How can one make it better? How banking can be possible as a new possibility that you can give in your car. How can you do your banking? How can you continue working in your office because you don't have to drive? These kind of researches are going in advance now. So where many people are still afraid about thinking about cars driving by itself. I mean, you know that already it has come. Many cars, I mean, you can set the speed and I mean, sit and the lane fixing can be done. It all runs by itself nowadays. But in 15 years, things are going to change. And also, nanotechnology is coming as a dramatic influencer of the change. So 25 years back, many people have been afraid about mobile phones. Now, I mean, nobody thinks that mobile phones are dangerous. People are getting savvy. Even elder people are getting savvy to it. But new equipments are coming, new technology is coming, and it's the speed is more and more. Don't get afraid with the new ideas, and it's only technology, but ideas also. Because we didn't have an idea earlier about democratic participation. Democracy is not only to elect people, but also influencing the decision-making process at every stage like in proportional representation or referendum, and all these ideas became part of democracy. One of the major definitions of democracy is not that people elect the majority, but the only last person has the right to air his opinion without fear. That's also part of democracy. The idea of democracy is growing. The idea of adapting technology to our life is growing. The idea of how to live is growing. In Japan, the people are stopping the idea of families. I hope you know about that thing. Majority of the people under 50, don't opt for. Earlier we had from families to nuclear families. Now the autonomous individual is a new idea in many countries. The autonomous individual is fulfilled by oneself. So the autonomous individual, the only thing that is connected with a partnership is if it is for having children, then you can decide about that, having a partner. But otherwise, if you don't have these kind of requirements, you can be an autonomous individual. This is a new idea about how to live. Nearly 40% of the people under 40 are living autonomously in Japan. Why do they do it? These are changing. The ideas are changing. People find it very powerful that they can decide for themselves. They are not controlled by anybody or anything. But all the same, you can have great friendships. You can have relations. You can have everything. But everybody is autonomous. That needs economic independence of all individuals. So these ideas emerge on the changing social situations. If people are dependent on each other, then it's not possible. When everybody is economically independent, and if everybody has to respect each other, nobody is a patriarch, nobody is a matriarch, nobody can control the other person. Everybody is mutually respecting each other's ideas, and everybody is standing on oneself. Why do you need a family? I mean, this idea is growing in many parts of the world. So the idea of family is transforming now. Am I adaptable to this idea? I have no problem in understanding a person with such an idea. I would say that people should be able to understand the changing values, changing systems, changing societies, and changing new rules of that is coming out from the new way of living. Some people are living in one side. People are going to autonomous individual. In some other places, people are going into polyandry families, joint families, not joint families like grandparents and children are all living, but couples living together as small communes. I mean, in USA, in some states, they are very popular such states. That I've recently seen a Netflix series on such a commune. So relation structures are changing, and it is going to undergo big changes in the coming decades. So are we adaptable to these ideas? Nobody should follow any special thing if you don't like it. But people who want changes, if somebody wants to have an autonomous life individually, as an individual, society need not say that, why don't you marry? Why don't you marry? Why don't you find a partner? No, it's none of society's business. It's their business. If some two couple want to live together as a four-member couple, it's nobody's business to interfere into that. Or somebody wants to live with two men, or somebody wants to live two women. If they all are comfortable with that, society should be tolerant to that. So these poly families are legally recognized in some states in the United States, in some other parts of Europe also. So these all are private individual understanding about the value system, this is the new development about ideas about families. So technology is changing and everything is changing. So tolerance to other ways of life, tolerance to new ways of understanding, tolerance to technology, tolerance to adapting new ideas, all these kind of things are important to live in a modern world. And rationalists and free thinkers should be in the forefront with the adaptability to new ideas of technology, of value system, of families, or everything.
So there are many medical solutions nowadays, like Ayurveda and euthanasia, or some say there should be the right to die, some choose homeopathy. So we have a lot of medical solutions nowadays. So how do you think that society can handle such a situation?
It's very simple. I think the only criterion is nothing against homeopathy, nothing against Ayurveda, nothing against Unani or anything. Any medicine is for addressing an ailment or a health situation. That should be evidence based. In any civilized society, any medicine should be evidence based. There should be proof of what is claimed and what is given to people. If something cannot come with evidences to prove how it works, that should not be given to people and sanctioned. So if that comes to in strict implementation, for example, uh, homeopathy will not be a part of an evidence-based medicine. Ayurveda would not be a part of the evidence-based medicine. Many of these things would not be part of the evidence-based medicine. But for example, many Ayurvedic herbs would work. If somebody wants to practice Ayurveda, somebody wants to eat Ayurvedic medicine or do some Ayurvedic things, nobody should be stopping them also, unless it's dangerous. For example, in Ayurveda, there are heavy metals used in some of the medicines. Lead is used, mercury is used. Such things are to be stopped. Such things should be banned, in fact. But if it's a complementary or supplementary thing for many people, I mean, one should have a clear mark that is a supplementary product, and there should not be any evidence-based uh, positions supporting this. There should be a label on that. That should be insisted. Like, for example, if you ban cigarette smoking, I would say that one should not ban cigarette smoking because that would not stop smoking at all. Rather, discouraging people by educating people and by even on cigarette packets telling it clearly. So cigarette smoking has come down dramatically in the world just by public campaign, public education, and stopping the advertisements connected with sports and other things, and or glorifying cigarette smoking. These all are things are stopped. But if you want cigarette, is still available there. But the consumption has gone down. And that should be the way one should actually address these alternative medicines also. One should make people more and more understand that they should not, we are not against homeopathy, against anything, but any medicine should be evidence based. Evidence based medicine should be the base of understanding about any kind of medical. For example, if DRDC brings a special medicine in India and say that it's good for COVID, and if a health minister sanctions it, that doesn't make it evidence based unless and until it goes through the process that is decided by the Indian Medical Council. So everything in a civilized society, everything should be the concerned expert body should approve that this is correct and this is evidence based, not on hearsay, not on belief. That's how it should be functioning. More?
Yes. So the other one is, what is the, so this one is a little bit existential. So the question is, what is the meaning of life? And is there a goal in our goal in our society?
Yeah, that's a question I've heard many times. For example, for a believer, there is a goal. For a Hindu, you are becoming part of the Parabrahma later. You are merging into the universal spirit. That's the goal. What's the goal of life? Many of the ancient Puranas in India, if you ask, or even Buddhist texts, what's the goal? Moksha is a goal. And what's moksha? Moksha is a freedom from the chain of rebirth, one can explain. So there are many ways. Becoming part of the universal spirit, there is Vedanta's explanation. Aham Brahmasmi, one can say. But some other people say that some other people see these kind of things in a different way. There is a goal to be becoming part of the the other world, which is controlled by your God. So there is a goal for Christians to be at the side of Jehovah, and there is only one job there: all the time praise this Lord. You get a great opportunity to do eternally to praise this God, and that's the most promising thing for these people. They all are waiting till the second coming of Jesus, and once they are, then all those people who are good will be simply raised to the heavens, and they will get an opportunity to eternally praise Jehovah. That's an opportunity. And for Muslim men, there's a different heaven to wait for. They would get immediately 75 huris are there, and I mean, there are a lot of things. There are rivers with wine, everything is waiting for them. Whatever is denied here is all available there. And I mean, it's absolutely male-dominated thought in the whole structure. Women are not given these structures. Women are not given all these 74, 72 young. I mean, these women that are available for men they are eternally young, and they don't have sweat, they don't sting. I mean, all fine, and they don't even sweat or go to toilet or anything. They have made only for your satisfaction and happiness. But unluckily, half the population, women don't get any of this. They don't get men like that, and they are promised they would get their old husband, and that is. I mean, what religious people are looking forward for. I mean, I don't know how many people really believe in this kind of thing, but for a rationalist, many people ask, for a free thinker, for an atheist, if you don't believe in another world, what are you waiting for? What is the goal of your life? It's meaningless. No, in fact, it's the other way around. A non-believer finds much better meaning in this life because he knows one small thing, that the life is here and now, and there is no life after that. So you have to make the best out of your life here and now. You make it happy. You love your dear ones. You make it better. You live, you enjoy your life. You try to eat the food that you like. You try to keep your health. You try to be helpful to the people around. You can express your kindness to others who want it. You have the capacity, you believe in this world. You express your empathy. So everything that is important in this life, or what we understood as valuable, and we try to communicate to people. We make scientific development for our advancement. We see dance and we see music and we sing and we enjoy our life. And we go to holidays and we love our little children. I mean, all these kind of things are the things that we have to enjoy here and now. There is no other world to look forward for. So be happy, be good, and be kind, and enjoy the life, and get the better things out of this life without injuring another person. That's the best thing that a human can do. You don't have to wait for another world to enjoy all these things. You can make heaven in your life here and now. That's the goal of a rationalist.
So regarding economy, what is your approach on economy in a free thought politics?
I would say any economy should be whatever form it has. It should be a welfare state. The state has one major purpose only: to look after the welfare of the people, and make policy decisions to advance the welfare. And that can have, further horizons, but to primarily that, a welfare state. That is my idea about an economy. And that can have, whatever is good. For example, is trade is good, open trade is good, laissez-faire is good, or as Ayn Rand said, absolute laissez-faire, where states perish and corporations take over. Well, both interestingly, Karl Marx, the messiah of the stateless society on the left-hand side, and Ayn Rand, the messiah of laissez-faire, free trade, on the other side, both believe in a stateless society where people govern themselves. It's an interesting irony that both of them reach there. But I would say that ideologies are coming and going. But above ideologies, above worldviews and everything, at the end of the day, every single human being should have a quality life. That should be guaranteed and that should be ensured, because we have technology, we have scientific advancement. All these centuries we have been working for a better thing, a better society. We have produced better crops, we have made better food, better quality of houses and everything we have. We have created wealth and we have we have explored the nature and we have found a lot of stuff that we can use for bettering our life. So the primary requirement of welfare and quality living for every single individual is so important, and they need not be, in my opinion, that I've expressed many times, I believe that it shall not be the struggle of people to go for the fundamentals. That shall be guaranteed in an advanced society. Nobody should be struggling for food. Nobody should be struggling for getting a place to sleep. Nobody should be struggling to get education. Nobody should be struggling to have proper dressing and freedom. All these kind of things have to be guaranteed by a state, and one should not. So the whole idea, if you or we all know that, 8 hours or earlier 12 hours people work to have a little food. That is what people used to work for, filling my stomach, to get my food. And that even animals have. They get their food. But for humans, to get your food, you have to work 12 hours or 8 hours every day. Why should you spend all your energy on doing some things and which you don't want otherwise, but just to get your food? Why can't you do something that is inspiring you, that is fascinating you, if these are guaranteed? Why shouldn't we make a system that there are enough natural resources, we have enough production? Why don't we guarantee that everybody gets everything possibly? These fundamental things should be guaranteed to everybody, and people should be able to do better things in their life, to advance our life and make quality of life. And the struggle, the work should be for betterment, better quality of things. And those who do things better, they should be able to get advanced quality of life. And the fundamentals should be available to everybody without even work. That's my approach to the right of the people, a welfare state, and where the basic rights are guaranteed and freedom is also recognized and conscience is also recognized as a basic right. And the least governing government, in my opinion, would be the best government. Government should eventually become, implementing things only, not that's a classical political statement also. The least governed government is the best government, where rules work and it's only implemented. That's what I consider the best possible governing system.
So after a lot of questions, this is the very last question that we come to today. And the question is, can you summarize your approach towards free thought politics and rational politics?
Yeah, it's very simple. What I tried to generally say was the right of the people to live decently as a fundamental right which should be guaranteed, number one. Freedom as a great value, where culture is respected, where art and everything of civilization, art, literature, music and everything is flourishing, where people are not quarreling each other. Tolerance is a major value, where everybody can keep their views, where things are science-based and evidence-based, and superstitions are, to the extent when it is influencing other people to their damage, it's stopped. All the same, people's rights are respected, privacy is respected, and individual as the dome of things. And that's the society that I want. For that, one needs a kind of a big change. I don't know what word one has to use. Revolution has a different meaning. A total change of mindset is what is required. A revolution in our mindset is required. This revolution in the human mindset is what the rationalist movement at the end of the day is targeting for. A change for a better world with science and understanding and civilization and tolerance and respect for freedom growing and growing, and our horizons growing, and we living to a new golden age of human life is what is we are targeting, where wars diminish and quarrels go, where everybody has their space. I mean, it could look utopian, but that's what we are targeting. But here in this world now, we should start for it, and we should build communities, units, and everywhere we have to start this change. Whatever political party you are, whether you are in a political party or not, you should all try to change the society towards this greater goal, try to influence policies. In some countries, if rationalists want to make political change by themselves also, I mean, I would not feel it very bad, but it need not have a special form how it is changed. But we need a change. This life has to be better, and we are not satisfied with the present day life because many things are unfit to a civilized world and the value system that we have. There is a non-compatibility with the ground realities and the values that we developed. And we have to build it up to fit to the modern value system that we have reached. That's what I think we have to do.
So thank you, sir, for answering all these questions. And I believe I'm done with all my questions now. Although we are over or with our time, but I would still ask people to ask their questions, and we are moving on to the question answer segment right now. If anybody has any question, please raise your hand from the tool below.
Shall we limit the questions to 2 or 3 should be, because I mean we have, yeah.
All right. Understandable. So if anybody wants to ask anything, please be precise with your questions. And because of the time limitation, we'll just take 2 to 3 questions today. Okay, so I see Mr. Ratish raising his hand. Sir, if you can unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hi, sir. Good evening. So my question is, can these superstitions, can it be considered as a human right? It's not a scientific belief, still it can be considered as a human right.
That's simple. See, the right to believe is a human right. For example, if somebody wants to believe in a God, that's a human right. You cannot take it away. If somebody wants to believe that astrology is right, how can you take away somebody's belief? You can try to educate public. You can try to pursue people with the friendly persuasion. But or astrologers making false claims can be stopped. If they are using fraudulent public claims, they can be made responsible for what they claim. But you cannot stop faith of somebody. That will be difficult. It's a human right. It's a human right even recognized by the faith, belief, worship, everything is part of faith, because you cannot go into the mind of somebody and say that you cannot believe that, you should not follow that. But all the same, you can discourage it by making them responsible. For example, a lot of false claims that they make. If they claim something, in Britain there is a law like that. If you make claims, you are responsible for that. You can be sued for if the claim does not work. So similarly, they should be made responsible for it. But by a right, somebody wants to practice some superstition. If it's not violating the right of other people, there is no way to stop it. And we should not also, because we should have a broader understanding about the societal tolerance level that we need also. We can fight against superstition, educate public. We can tell people, you can convince people, but you cannot stop what he believes.
Okay, so let's move on to the next one. Mr. Saptashiv Bhattacharya, please ask your question.
Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you are.
So I would like to ask Mr. Edamaruku, sir, your this thing that you want to give freedom of expression to everyone for all the topics, means all the subjects. even for belief in this type of superstition. But don't you think it is absolutely wrong to give them freedom of expression in things which can harm people in other things? Like, let us take your own case. What the reason why you had to leave India was because some people were following some useless, this Christ water coming out from Jesus Christ's body, and they were drinking. It was only harming those people. But these people's freedom of expression, they used it against you. And this is what they are doing. They don't play by the rules of the game. For them, that is something else. And like the good people like us, when we allow them to do it, they take advantage of the gullible people and make the life very difficult. And the second thing is, right now in India, you can see how Baba Ramdev is using his freedom of expression to spread all nonsense about pseudoscience. Pseudoscience, superstition, if we give them a free hand because of freedom of expression, it is actually going to harm us. So a strong step should be taken instead giving them means handling them with kid gloves.
Yeah, that's a good question, and I mean, well said also. I mean, thank you very much for that question. So the question I'll take the example of Mumbai. There are two things. Somebody's right to believe in something, or somebody's right to express his belief is one thing, and somebody trying to spread something which is based on wrong facts. These are two different things. So if somebody makes a fraudulent claim about a miracle and try to make the gullible people victims of that faith and encouraging them to take this this fraudulent thing or the holy water, what they claim, instead of medicine, there is a crime involved in that. That can be criminalized. When I say that, decriminalize things, but fraudulent means to spread a wrong thing can be easily it can be simply be booked as a crime. So, but believing in something, suppose somebody believes that, well, Jesus Christ has resurrected, you cannot stop it. Belief, you cannot stop. But spreading this idea that Jesus Christ resurrected, also you cannot stop because it's his right to spread his idea. But on the other side, you have the full right. The problem is those people who have the right to criticize this don't have the right, but they only have the right now. Therefore, when we say that this is absurd, we are punished or we are persecuted. And when we address that with the same freedom of right which we try to, that's a tricky position. I normally say that, well, they have to believe, they have the right to believe in all stupidity, but they have no right to claim that this is a medicine. The moment you claim that it's a medicine, it can cure you, they are actually practicing a wrong medicine, non-evidence-based medicine on people. Because the moment you say that this medicine, this is a medicine that can cure you, they're doing a crime actually. They are using something which is not a medicine, which cannot be proved as a medicine, which is never even considered as a medicine, as a solution for your ailment. That there is a crime involved. That is where they have to be addressed. For example, in the name of faith, if people beat each other or kill each other or inflict pain on little children, that is not part of faith alone. That's not a question of faith. For example, if I would say that even circumcision of young boys, because if a person who is an adult can decide to mutilate a part of his body, he has the right to do that. You cannot stop if a person of 18 years decides that, well, I want circumcision. He should have that right. But nobody has the right to inflict such a crime, because a child's body is his body and parent only is a custodian of that body, and he has no right to circumcise a body when he cannot take a decision on that. He cannot reverse it later. Like the female, genital mutilation, which is also, secretly prevalent even in India, how hard it is. This Ayan Hirsi Ali, you have to read her book, how she is going through such a terrible situation. And of course, she became a politician and a minister in Netherlands and became a very powerful writer. But she spoke about that experience. And you are helpless, you cannot do anything. So where these kind of things, inflicting pain upon other people, inflicting pain upon, or your superstition imposed on other people, can be stopped by law. One should be very courageous to stop such things. But on the same time, if even a female wants to have mutilation of the part of their body after becoming an adult, can one stop that? If you do it on another person, you can stop it. If one wants to make a hole on the nose, you cannot stop it. You can do it anywhere. So that's your right as an individual, but as adult only. As a youngster, nobody has the right to impose it upon. Second thing, in Mumbai, what happened was I was not cornered because of their right to spread superstition. I challenged that right because I said that it's not a reality. It's based on a false understanding, and I've been expressing my free expression, and I've been not against their free expression. They were invited in the same television program to defend the superstition. But if it ended there, the public anyway did not go to this miracle place the next day. Nobody, every day 1,000 people were visiting. Even I had to leave India, but the next day onwards, not a single person was going there to collect this holy water, which was holy toilet water, because people understood it. That is the power of free expression. But what they used was not free expression. They used muscle power. They sent goons to attack me at the television studio. I have to escape with my friend to stay in a place, in a different place, and go in a different flight back to Delhi to save our life. That was a very hard situation. And later they filed cases which are wrong. There is a law in India where if anybody's religious sentiment is hurt with malicious intention, he can be arrested without an arrest warrant, etc., etc. No case is charged yet, but they have filed cases, and those all are in the police stations. There is no case charged because the police has an unbridled right to arrest a person without an arrest warrant by this law. This law is stopping free expression. In fact, when this law was coming, there was a discussion in the lawmaking body at that time. Will this law be used against critics of religion and reformists? So this was meant for addressing communal right. It was guaranteed at the lawmaking body at that time that it would not be used against critics of religion or reformists, but it's only used against critics of religion. The other person who was charged with this case was Periyar E.V. Ramaswamy in 1960. I was also charged with the same thing. But that's because freedom of expression is not guaranteed. It's only technically in the first part of the Constitution. When you come to the Criminal Procedure Code, it's not guaranteed. Therefore, I wanted to challenge it in the constitutional bench when the case comes, but the case never came. So the belief you cannot stop, but spreading, if somebody goes and put some trident in their cheek, in the part of a faith, if he's an adult and he does consciously, we can say that this is stupid. You cannot do that. If that is a miraculous thing, why don't you put through your forehead or through your neck? You cannot do that. You can only do it with the skin. You can say it. You can campaign. You can show it. You can educate people. But if an adult does a part of his faith privately, how can you stop it? You cannot stop it. Even if you stop it, it will happen. But when your freedom is taken out, when you are criticizing that, that's the problem where it is. So freedom of faith or practicing a superstition. Astrology is stupid, we all know. It's baseless. There is no meaning. We say it publicly, but you cannot be arrested for that. But when somebody can say that it's part of it's Patanjali's original part of faith, and it's my faith is hurt because you are hurting the sentiment of an astrology believer. One can go to a court of law, but we didn't reach that level. It can reach one day. But also superstition propagated by false medicines by Baba Ramdev, that's a criminal act. The Indian Medical Council should take an action and file a case against him and arrest him for that. Because he has came out with several medicines. Even government of India has asked him to stop it. But the whole problem is these people have enormous political clout. It's not freedom of expression. Freedom of expression is not to propagate a false medicine which can be given to people in a pandemic. No, that's not freedom of expression. That's a false claim of a medicine. It's selling a fake medicine to the victim. That's a criminal act. And that should be addressed very strictly, and his company should be confiscated by government for such things. That's my opinion. But that's not freedom of expression. Freedom of expression is the right to criticize. If he says that, well, I have a medicine, but he cannot sell a medicine, he cannot produce a medicine, if it's not sanctioned by the Indian Medical Council or the authorities who decide about that. He cannot do that. But it's done because we have laws that allows non-evidence-based medicines to be sold. And under the cover, one can do such things. Thank you. Anyway, that's a good thought. I mean, it's not free. There's a difference between freedom of expression
But
and
one
right
thing
to practice privately superstition.
One thing, if I can also ask, just I know the time is short, but it is very interesting topic. I think the free thought politics has lost itself because of the deeds of the previous communist governments. See, Stalin, when we talk of, rationalist politicians, people compare it with Stalin, Pol Pot, Idi Amin, and right now we don't have any idol. Fidel Castro, we cannot say that they are, proponents of free thinking or free thought. They themselves were tyrants.
Yeah.
And they themselves broke many churches in Russia. I went to Russia. I saw in Moscow one very beautiful church. It was demolished. It was turned into a swimming pool. Then again, when this government came, Russian government, they again made the new church, the Cathedral of Christ the Savior, something like that. So when these people have done all this, how to come out? Because now in India, I know you must be knowing, people don't trust free thinking people. They think they are all communists. These people are not to be trusted, and they have lost all trust. So now it is between one type of fanaticism versus another type of fanaticism. Where are the free thinkers?
I fully agree with what you say, because that is why I specifically said free thought politics. Because Mao Zedong was not a free thinker. He was a communist. Communism is, its fundamental ideology is based on its materialistic idea is there behind it. But that doesn't mean that the value system that we are speaking about, based on human tolerance and freedom, is not what they have been speaking about. Stalin, for example, he has suppressed. So I would say, that's why I said suppressing religion is not the way to handle it. Freedom of religion should be guaranteed in a civilized society. But religion should be addressed in a very different way without violating the right of anybody to practice what they want. In Russia, in fact, after the first stage of Stalin, then they understood that this is used by the opponents, and Russia has decided to nationalize even the churches. In Russia, at the time, this whole of Soviet Union, the churches, the maintenance money was given by the government. The Bible was printed with funds sanctioned by the government. And the bishops were given salary by the government. The Soviet Union was giving bishops. And Pimen, the Patriarch Pimen, I remember when he was visiting India, he claimed that his salaries are coming from the government, and the government wants to coexist with us. We don't want to coexist with their position. But these people were born after the Russian Revolution. So therefore, I would say that communism as an ideology has a serious drawback. The drawback is it did not consider freedom as a great value. Whatever political reasons, compulsions they had, freedom as a great political value was not part of the communist political system. Therefore, they did not allow opposition political parties. Political opposition was not tolerated in any of the communist regimes anywhere in the world. Anywhere. So if the classical word that Lenin has used, the dictatorship of proletariat, has also given an idea that for achieving a great goal, the end justifies the means, kind of an idea is what has been guiding them. So I would not consider, as free thinkers or rationalists in this category, I would consider George Washington, Jefferson, Thomas Paine. I mean, these are the stalwarts of rationalism. If you say, for example, even from everywhere you can see people, Idi Amin was not an atheist even. I mean, he was a fundamentalist Muslim. I mean, he finally went to Saudi Arabia and they gave political asylum to him there in Saudi Arabia. But many of these, the communist leaders, they are personally atheists. They were or they are personally atheists. But they cannot be considered free thinkers who valued freedom of the individual and free expression and political expression and the growth of democracy and all these ideas were not part of their structure. They have a dogmatic structure and they believed what should be achieved, and they had a method which is prescribed, and they went accordingly. And all other things were suppressed. And also what one can see is the kind of political suppression of opponents that Stalin has done or what Pol Pot has done. That cannot be justified in the name of the worldview that they have. Either it's communism or if they were atheists, that is not represented. But you cannot accuse atheism with that. So, for example, Hitler was a devout Catholic. Mussolini was part of the Catholic system. He has donated this Vatican, did not have a land. I mean, Roman Empire has collapsed and they didn't have any, after Byzantine Empire's collapse, when the Ottoman Empire came, they didn't have a place. So they were given Vatican, the 64 acres of land, which is the world headquarters of the Catholic Church, was gifted to them by Mussolini for blessing their wars. Lateran Treaty. Through that only they got it. So Mussolini and Hitler were devout believers. That doesn't mean that belief has guided them. Therefore, I would say you cannot accuse atheism for Stalin and you cannot accuse Catholic Church for Hitler. Because these are private people doing what they want. But the idea of free thinking, for example, Charles Barkley, a politician, you know a lot of British politicians who were atheists. I mean, very respected. Michael Foot, who was very recently the Labour leader, he was an atheist very clearly. And I mean, everywhere in the world, even interestingly, I've been reading today, Moshe Dayan, the leader of Israel, he was an atheist personally. The founder of, the Israel state, he was an atheist. In Israel, there are a lot of atheists. That's there are people beyond faith and beyond distribution of their geographical distribution. There are many people who are atheists and non-believers. But as an ideology, many communists, or majority of the communists are atheists. But communism is a dogma. Marxism is a dogma. And I'm happy that many of the communists are standing for progressive views on many things. That doesn't mean that the dogmatic position that they have on their political goals, if they come to power, would be difficult to understand or digest. It can be equally dangerous than any other kind of dictatorial regimes. That's what history has shown us. So I would say that I'm a rationalist, core rationalist, I'm a free thinker. I'm not a communist. I'm not a communist, clearly. I can say it anywhere.
Thank you.
Okay, so I think this is the end of our meeting today. Thank you everyone for staying with us till the end. And thank you, sir, for answering these questions with such a spirit. See you all next week.
Yeah, that was a marathon session. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody.